This is the disclosure of information on lead-based paint and lead-based paint hazards for any properties that were built prior to 1978. So anything that was built prior to 1978, this document we are required to have this on file, both myself and the other agent. So if I'm representing you as the seller, I have to sign it. If I'm representing you as the buyer, then it should have the other listing information or listing agent's information on there. So when we receive this document, most of the time it's an MLS. It's part of the contract. But sometimes we get it after contract acceptance. Every agent sort of handles this differently. So as a seller, you're going to fill out section 1 that the buyer acknowledges in section 2, and then both the listing agent and the buyer's agent sign, along with the sellers and the buyers signing here, initialing. Everybody initials. So lead-based paint was obviously very common prior to 1978. They stopped using it then. So if you have a homeowner that maybe was the original owner to the home, then they're supposed to disclose anything that they know about the property and if they're aware of any lead-based paint in the property. So it's pretty important. It is a required document by the Department of Real Estate, and it says every buyer of any interest in residential real property on which a residential dwelling was built prior to 1978 is notified that such property may present exposure to lead from lead-based paint, which may place young children at risk of developing lead poisoning. Lead poisoning in young children may produce permanent neurological damage, including learning disabilities, reduced intelligence quotient, behavioral problems, and impaired memory. Lead poisoning also poses a particular risk to pregnant women. The seller of any interest in residential real property is required to provide the buyer with information on lead-based paint hazards from risk assessments or inspections in the seller's possession, and to notify the buyer of any known lead-based paint hazards. Risk assessment or inspection for possible lead-based paint or lead-based paint hazards is recommended prior to purchase. So this is basically just saying these are the risks, these are the hazards associated with lead-based paint. You need to be aware of them if you're purchasing a home prior to 1978. And additionally, if a seller had done any lead-based paint inspections or testing or anything like that, those reports need to be passed on to the buyer, as part of their due diligence. So if I'm representing you as the seller and you have these documents, it's best to go ahead and provide them, find them, get them to me so that we can give them to the new buyers. If you're the buyer, obviously we're going to be asking for any documentation like that. So this first section says lead-based paint and or lead-based paint hazards. Seller is aware. So box 1 says that seller is aware. And if they are aware, then they need to explain it here on this line. Seller has no knowledge of any lead-based paint or any lead-based paint hazards in the residence. So if they don't know if there's lead-based paint, then they're going to check this box. If they are aware of it, if they did testing, they found something, or if they did testing and they didn't find anything, then they would, depending on their answer, they're going to check one of these 2 boxes. Records and reports available to the seller. So if the seller has any records, the seller is provided the buyer with all available records and reports relating to lead-based paint or lead-based paint hazards to the residents, or they have no reports. So they're going to check this box saying that they have them, or this box saying that no, they don't have them. They're basically disclosing the information that they have regarding the lead-based paint and the property. If they don't have any knowledge, they don't have any knowledge. All we can do is ask. If they lie on this document, then we have grounds to take them to court at some point if we find out that they lied. So, and then right here it says seller acknowledges that seller's obligation to disclose any real estate agents to whom seller directly or indirectly is to pay compensation with regard to the transaction contemplated by this disclosure, any known lead-based paint or lead-based paint hazards in the premises to be sold, as well as the existence of any reports or records relating to lead-based paint or lead-based paint hazards in the premises to be sold. Seller further acknowledges that the disclosure accurately reflects the entirety of the information provided by the seller to the agent with regard to lead-based paint hazards, and lead-based paint risk assessment or inspection reports. So you're basically attesting that whatever you set up here in section 1A and 1B, whether you have the testing records or you don't have testing records, whether you're aware or not, that whatever you said, that you were being honest and truthful and that that information that you have given me, if I'm representing you in the sale of the home, is honest and truthful. All right, so this is what is provided first, and then as part of the buyer's due diligence period, inspection period, they would fill out this section right here. So section 2 is related to the buyer. Buyer has read the information set forth above and has received copies of reports, records, or materials listed above, if any. So you're just acknowledging that you read it. If they gave you the documents, then great. If there were any documents, if you didn't have any documents, then I mean, there's nothing we can do about that. That you've received the pamphlet, Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home. That's actually part of the buyer advisory that you receive and that you sign upon working with me when we do a buyer consultation. I always have buyers go ahead and sign that. So the lead-based paint, Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home, that's already part of the buyer advisory. So it would be something that you would just go ahead and sign that you've already received that. And then you check 1. You've received a 10-day opportunity or mutually agreed upon period to conduct a risk assessment or inspections for presence of lead-based paint or lead-based paint hazards, or you waive the opportunity. So for some buyers, they really want to do that. Lead-based paint is of significant concern. They want to go ahead and have their opportunity to assess the property and ensure that it's safe for their family. Some people that there isn't that same concern. We're 50 something years out from having lead-based paint. For some people, they don't really care whether or not they need to do an additional assessment on the property. So depending on where you stand and what you want and what you feel is best for yourself, your family, in the short and the long term, then we would check one of these 2 boxes and move forward accordingly. So if you would like to have your opportunity to do a lead-based paint assessment, then obviously we will return this after we've done the assessment. And if you waive your right and you decide that you don't want to do an assessment, that's fine too. We check this box and we send it back to the seller as part of our inspection period. And then down here is agent's acknowledgement. So whether I'm representing the seller or the buyer, I have to sign this as well as the other agent that's party to the transaction. Any real estate agent who is to receive compensation from the seller or the listing agent with regard to the transaction contemplated in this disclosure must initial below. The agents whose initials appear below have ensured that the seller's compliance under the Residential Resale Lead-Based Paint Hazard Reduction Act of 1992 by the seller's use and completion of the disclosure form. So we're just signing that we were aware, we've been given the information, and we're just acknowledging that we're in compliance with the disclosure on this form. And then certification of accuracy. Basically, everybody's signing that the information above is true and correct to the best of their knowledge, and we're moving forward however we choose to move forward during the terms of the contract.